Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us here today. Earlier this week, Alberta began our pushback against Ottawa's disastrous draft electricity regulations, and I'm pleased to be here with Rebecca Schultz, our Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, as well as our Minister of Affordability and Utilities, Nathan Neudorf, to share the details with you. By now, you're all aware of Ottawa's proposed electricity regulations, which are intended to force rapid and risky changes on the nation's power grid by 2035. Calling their plans poorly conceived doesn't begin to touch on their injustice. They are disastrously uninformed and totally disconnected from reality. If implemented, the proposed federal electricity regulations will stick Canadian families and businesses with unaffordable bills and provincial governments with crushing debt. And the grid itself, based on unreliable energy sources, will risk leaving many of us shivering in the darkness in the dead of winter or sweating it out in plus 30 weather in the summer. There are a few major facts that deserve to be widely known. First is the cost of Canada's electricity systems has been built up over decades. Radically redesigning them in 12 years would cost Canadians at least $1 trillion and possibly as much as $1.7 trillion. Alberta would bear the largest cost of any province, estimated at coming anywhere between $200 billion to more than $400 billion. And those expenses would ultimately end up being passed on to you, Albertans, everyone, from single parents to nonprofits to small businesses. How governments, families, and businesses would be able to pay for all of this is beyond me. I suspect it's beyond Ottawa, too. In their rush to serve narrow ideological interests and pat themselves on the back, they didn't stop to think about the consequences for Canadians. The second main issue is the replacement energy sources that we are meant to use. We know that Alberta is a destination of choice for energy development of all kinds, and we're proud to use multiple sources of energy. But we also need to be realistic. Wind and solar are intermittent. Energy storage technology has not advanced to overcome that, meaning electricity supplies could simply stop repeatedly and dangerously. In Alberta, we do not have enough non-emitting baseload electricity available from hydroelectric or nuclear, and there's not enough time to build that by 2035. Even with plentiful natural gas, our grid has had 10 Level 3 alerts since 2022. Stable electricity supplies depend on a diverse mix of baseload power sources that are always ready to go. This will become truer as demand for electricity soars in the future, and renewables can't carry the load. So under the proposed changes, our province would be left at risk of blackouts and brownouts at the mercy of minus 30-degree deep freezes during the coldest months of the winter and plus 30-degree heat waves in the hottest months of summer. These are facts that Ottawa chooses to ignore. It's also worth noting that legislating and regulating the development of electricity is exclusively a provincial responsibility under our Constitution, and no good intentions can make up for overstepping the limits of the law. The federal electricity regulations will create a system that is massively unaffordable, dangerously unreliable, and utterly unconstitutional. Canadians need to know the facts about what's at stake here, and we're ensuring that they will. Alberta's government has launched a public awareness campaign across the country to inform Canadians of Ottawa's reckless and costly plan. We are running print, radio, television, and social media ads, along with billboards and bus wraps. These highlight how the regulations will make it more expensive for Canadians by increasing power bills. It'll drive off investment in jobs, and it will threaten the reliability of our power grid and put it at risk. And as we all begin to feel the temperatures dip and the wind grow cooler, having just come off a summer with heat waves, we are reminded that we live in a country of extremes. Our campaign urges everyone to contact their MPs and have their say so that Ottawa can hear how many people are deeply concerned. Alberta is determined to reduce emissions. Our province cut electricity emissions by 53% between 2005 and 2021. And we're enacting a plan to create a reliable and affordable carbon-neutral power grid by 2050. The key words here are reliable and affordable. Anything else will lead to ruin for Canadian families, businesses, and the economy. We cannot afford to stay quiet on this. While we are expanding our efforts to affect change from Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault, we remain committed to working with the federal government to lower emissions. Our governments do not disagree on the importance of reducing emissions. We do not disagree on reaching a target by 2050. We continue to have our conversations together. We do, however, disagree on the timeline and pace of the interim targets and the impossible expectations placed on Albertans, on their wallets, on technologies, and on Alberta's power grid. However grand the vision, it must be realistic, and this is not realistic. We will do our best to help Canadians realize that we have to demand better than the high-risk, punishing costs and questionable outcomes from the national government.